The story of Bad Chad Customs didn't begin with flashy lights, television cameras, or global fame. It began in a quiet corner of Canada, in the rural heart of Nova Scotia, where the roads wind through small towns and rolling farmland, and where passion often grows in garages instead of boardrooms. Chad Hiltz wasn't born into luxury or opportunity. He was born into grit. Raised in a working-class environment, Chad grew up surrounded by a culture that valued hard work, creativity, and doing more with less. While other kids might have spent their summers playing ball or riding bikes, Chad was fascinated by machines. Not the kind fresh off the lot, but the ones left to rot in fields, the forgotten frames buried under rust and time. He didn't see scrap. He saw potential. Chad's earliest encounters with cars were not in polished showrooms, but in junkyards, driveways, and barns. That's where he learned his first lesson. You don't need money to build something great. You need vision. By his teens, he was already rebuilding engines and tinkering with frames. He would salvage old parts, weld rusted panels, and handcraft components no one else could figure out how to replicate. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. In many ways, his style was a rebellion against the conventional automotive industry, a world filled with high-end restorations, expensive tools, and perfect paint jobs. Chad wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing character, the kind of character that comes from making something unique, raw, and utterly unforgettable. Friends would watch him work with scrap metal and worn-out tools and wonder how he turned nothing into something remarkable. But to Chad, it was simple. It's not what you have, it's what you can make. That became more than a motto. It became a philosophy, one that would eventually resonate with millions. Chad wasn't just a car builder. He was a storyteller. Each vehicle he built told a story of resurrection, of forgotten beauty rediscovered, of a craftsman's hands bringing steel and soul back to life. He believed in every curve of the frame, every bolt in the chassis, every squeak of a worn suspension. The cars he restored didn't just look different, they felt different. His earliest builds weren't created for fame. They were labors of love, made for local car shows, weekend exhibitions, or simply for the thrill of watching a machine breathe again. And then came the little garage that could. Tucked away on Highway 358 near the small town of Canning, Nova Scotia, was a modest workshop that locals would pass by without a second glance. That shop would become the birthplace of Bad Chad Customs. In those early years, there was no television crew, no production team, and certainly no expectation of becoming a household name. There was only Chad, a few loyal friends, and a small but fierce dream to build something extraordinary out of the ordinary. The workshop wasn't fancy. It didn't have top-of-the-line tools or corporate sponsorship, but it had heart, and it had Chad's boundless imagination. He started with what he could find, parts salvaged from junkyards, donated car shells, and scrap materials that others discarded. Where someone else saw rust, Chad saw a blank canvas. From early on, Chad was joined by someone who would become as integral to his journey as the cars themselves, Jolene McIntyre. She wasn't just a partner in the shop. She was his partner in life. Intelligent, driven, and just as passionate about the business, Jolene became the operational and emotional backbone of the brand. Together, they weren't just building cars. They were building something bigger, a life, a dream, and soon, a legacy. Their workflow was simple. Chad brought the vision, the welding torch, and the grease-covered determination. Jolene brought the structure, the marketing mind, and the balance. Their chemistry was undeniable. While Chad could spend 12 hours hammering out fenders, Jolene would be organizing schedules, coordinating parts, and managing the growing chaos that came with their rising ambition. It was this blend of artistic madness and grounded execution that would eventually catch the attention of something far greater, television. But that moment was still a few years away. For now, their focus was local. Chad's builds began to turn heads at regional car shows. Word of mouth started to spread, and slowly, the myth of Bad Chad began to take form. The name itself, Bad Chad, wasn't born out of ego or attitude. It was a nickname given to him by friends, a playful twist on his edgy, rebellious style. It stuck and it fit, not because Chad was a bad person, but because he was bad to the bone when it came to building cars that broke the mold. What made Chad's early work so captivating wasn't just the final product. It was the journey to get there. People were drawn to his process, the cutting, the welding, the trial and error, the problem solving. He would take a 60s era frame, mix it with parts from 4 different decades, and somehow make it all work. Not just functionally, but beautifully. And none of this was done behind closed doors. He welcomed people into the shop. He shared his thinking. He educated local kids about car culture and custom builds. For Chad, it wasn't about hoarding knowledge. It was about passing it on, about spreading the love for old metal and handmade work. It's ironic that someone who never set out to be a star would become one. Not because he chased attention, but because attention couldn't ignore him. By the mid-2010s, people started taking videos of Chad's work, posting them on social media, and sharing them far beyond Nova Scotia. These raw clips, no scripts, no editing, showcased an artist at work. Viewers saw a man knee-deep in oil, hammering out dreams with nothing but a welder and willpower. Those videos lit a spark. They were seen by a small production scout who had worked on automotive reality TV before. That scout reached out, asked if Chad would be interested in documenting his builds. Chad was hesitant at first. He wasn't a performer. He was a builder. But Jolene saw the potential. And just like that, the conversation that would change their lives forever began. From that dusty little shop in Nova Scotia, a global story was about to be told. Tucked away on the scenic stretch of Highway 358, just outside the sleepy town of Canning, Nova Scotia, stood an old, unassuming garage. Most people would have driven past it without giving it a second thought. A modest building, nothing flashy. No neon signs. No roaring engines you'd hear from a mile away. But inside those 4 walls, history was being made. A culture was being born, and a movement was slowly taking shape. This was the home of Hiltz Auto Company, the workshop that would later be known to millions as the heartbeat of Bad Chad Customs. For Chad and Jolene, this garage wasn't just a place of work, it was a sanctuary, a creative lab, a place where limitations were left at the door and imagination ruled. In a world full of cookie-cutter restorations and overpriced builds, Chad's garage became a symbol of rebellion, of doing things your own way with your own hands. What set Chad apart wasn't just his talent. It was his philosophy. Where most builders sought perfection and symmetry and polish, Chad sought soul. He didn't need state-of-the-art tools or new factory parts. Give him a welder, a pile of scrap, and a challenge, and he'd build you something you'd never forget. Every build in that shop had a heartbeat. Every car had a story, and Chad, like a sculptor with steel, was the one who brought those stories back to life. The community around Chad began to grow, quietly but steadily. At first, it was locals, farmers, mechanics, dreamers, dropping by the shop to catch a glimpse of what Chad was working on. Then it was regional enthusiasts, hearing whispers of a guy who could turn junk into gold. And soon, car fans from all over the country were making the pilgrimage to Nova Scotia, just to see the wizard behind the weld. And through it all, Jolene stood strong by his side. While Chad brought the vision and craftsmanship, Jolene brought structure and strategy. She helped organize builds, documented their progress, and began building a brand identity around their work. What was once just a nickname, Bad Chad, started to carry weight. It wasn't just a person anymore. It was a brand, an idea. People weren't just interested in the cars. They were interested in the people, in the life that Chad and Jolene were building together. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was a movement, one that stood for resourcefulness, authenticity, and passion over polish. It was about getting your hands dirty, about earning every inch of progress with sweat and fire. And the online world was about to take notice. As short clips of Chad's builds circulated across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, people began to share them with captions like, "This guy's a genius," or "Real car culture, no BS." These organic posts, often filmed on phones with shaky hands and garage lighting, carried more raw energy than any big-budget promo ever could. And that rawness, that honesty, that's what made Bad Chad Customs different. While many automotive personalities try to play a role, Chad was just himself. No filters, no acting. Just a man obsessed with building cars in the most creative ways imaginable. And the world was paying attention. Loudspeaker, by the way, if you're just joining this documentary and you're loving this deep dive into the rise of a true underdog, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Witty Thinkers. This is where we tell real stories about real people who create greatness from nothing. Click that bell icon so you're always the first to know when we drop something special. Back in Nova Scotia, Chad's workshop was beginning to feel more like a production set, even before any cameras officially rolled. The energy in the air was shifting, and it was only a matter of time before someone would walk through those garage doors with a bigger vision. That someone came in the form of a television producer. A scout working with Discovery Channel had stumbled across one of the viral videos featuring Chad. No script, no narration, just a man welding in a cloud of sparks with a car that looked like it was being resurrected. It was raw, it was gritty, and it was exactly what TV had been missing. Meetings were arranged. Phone calls were made. At first, Chad wasn't sure if he was ready to bring cameras into his sanctuary. His world was simple, and he liked it that way. But Jolene saw the opportunity not just as fame, but as a platform. A way to share their story with the world and inspire a new generation of car builders, artists, and dreamers. And so, a deal was struck. Discovery Channel greenlit a brand new reality series focused on Hiltz Auto Company. The name? Bad Chad Customs. It was perfect. It captured the spirit, the edge, and the mystery behind this Nova Scotia phenom. Soon, the small garage on Highway 358 became a filming location. Cameras were set up. Crew members got to work. But unlike so many other shows, Bad Chad Customs didn't feel staged. It felt lived in. Authentic. You could smell the burning rubber and oil through the screen. From day one, the show offered viewers a rare glimpse inside the world of real custom work. There was no glamorous backdrop, no corporate sponsors, just a passionate team building magic out of scrap. The charm wasn't in the polish. It was in the process. Audiences were hooked. They watched as Chad took impossible ideas and turned them into rolling works of art. They followed the sparks, the mistakes, the triumphs, and the laughs. But more than that, they connected with the spirit of the show, the message that with creativity, hustle, and love for what you do, you can build something legendary. It was unlike anything on TV at the time, and that's exactly why it worked. The debut of Bad Chad Customs was a revelation. It was more than just entertainment. It was a movement capture on screen. A workshop that had started with rusted metal and a dream was now inspiring millions around the world. And while Chad and Jolene never set out to be stars, the world had other plans. What came next would elevate them to international fame. But as we'll soon uncover, with every rise comes pressure. With every spotlight, shadows grow. The cameras started rolling, and almost overnight, Bad Chad Customs went from a hidden gem in Nova Scotia to a full-blown international sensation. The world, it seemed, had been waiting for something like this. Something real, raw, and utterly refreshing in a sea of overproduced reality television. The premiere aired in 2019 on Discovery Channel, and from the very first frame, viewers were drawn in. It wasn't just the sight of Chad hammering out custom fenders or slicing through steel that grabbed attention. It was the energy, the honesty, the sense that you were watching something truly different. This wasn't your polished, big city garage filled with shiny toys. This was a small-town operation run on heart, hustle, and a deep love for the craft. And it connected. Hard. Emails, messages, and fan mail began flooding in. Mechanics in Mexico, gearheads in Germany, classic car lovers in the UK, all watching, all inspired. Because Bad Chad Customs wasn't just a show about cars. It was about what people can do when they believe in their vision, no matter how limited their resources might be. The show featured no million-dollar builds, no high-end shops, just Chad, Jolene, and a tight-knit team doing what they do best, building dreams out of junkyard relics. Pushpin, before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed to Witty Thinkers, the only place where we tell powerful stories about underdogs who rise through passion, purpose, and pure determination. Smash that like button, ring the bell, and join our growing community of thinkers, builders, and dreamers. What made the show especially unique was its commitment to storytelling. Every episode introduced viewers to not just a car project, but the soul behind it. Maybe it was an old 1960s truck rescued from a forgotten barn, or a muscle car that had been passed down through generations, waiting to be reborn. These weren't just mechanical tasks, they were emotional restorations. The audience wasn't just watching sheet metal being bent and engines roaring back to life. They were witnessing redemption of vehicles, of stories, of people. And at the center of it all was Chad Hiltz. With his signature bandana, greased hands, and laser focus, Chad wasn't playing a character. He was the character, the real deal, no script, hard-nosed craftsman who didn't care about fame, only function. His catchphrase, "It's not what you have, it's what you can make," began circulating online like wildfire. It became a rallying cry for builders and creators worldwide who were tired of the idea that you needed wealth to create something worthwhile. But as much as Chad's personality drove the show, there was no denying the essential role Jolene McIntyre played. Viewers connected with her immediately. She wasn't there to just stand in the background. She was front and center, managing projects, sourcing materials, and often jumping into the build herself. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind balanced Chad's fiery intensity. The dynamic between the two was electric, not forced, not scripted, just real. And that authenticity, that emotional honesty, became the fuel that drove the series. With each passing episode, the builds got bolder. A custom motorcycle made from scrap metal. A low-slung hot rod that looked like it came straight out of 1950s drag race. A retro-styled convertible made from parts of 3 different decades. All handcrafted with Chad's signature approach. No shortcuts, no compromise, and a relentless dedication to originality. But Bad Chad Customs wasn't just capturing the attention of everyday fans. The automotive world was taking notice too. Chad and Jolene began receiving invitations to major car shows and trade expos. Their builds were now being displayed beside some of the most prestigious custom cars in the industry. And while some purists in the automotive elite were skeptical at first, it didn't take long for them to see the genius behind Chad's methods. Here was a guy building frame-off restorations in a tiny rural garage with limited tools and zero corporate backing, and still producing work that could stand next to the best in the business. That's when the global media came calling. Chad and Jolene were invited to speak at car culture events in Europe, South America, and Asia. Their faces began appearing in magazines, on podcasts, and in YouTube reaction videos. The Bad Chad Customs logo became more than just a symbol. It became a movement badge for anyone who believed in the power of doing more with less. Meanwhile, Discovery Channel executives saw gold. The show had become one of their most popular reality titles in the automotive category, drawing audiences from both hardcore gearheads and casual viewers alike. It was a perfect storm, dramatic builds, a likable crew, and a story deeply rooted in values everyone could relate to: family, passion, perseverance. So they doubled down. A second season was greenlit almost immediately. Production ramped up. Bigger builds were planned. Fan interaction exploded. But with every new spotlight came new pressure. What had once been a slow, methodical process of organic creativity was now being tied to deadlines. Scripts, production schedules, ratings. The shop that used to feel like a sacred space for raw creativity now had multiple cameras, producers, and crew members dictating where to stand and when to say certain lines. It was still their show, but it wasn't quite their rhythm anymore. Chad, ever the craftsman, began to feel that tension. He loved the fans. He appreciated the opportunity. But what he didn't love was the creeping feeling that the soul of the show, the freedom to build from the heart, was slowly being chipped away by the machinery of television. Still, they pressed on, because the fans mattered, the message mattered, and the dream, despite the new challenges, was still alive. But as Season 2 wrapped and the buzz reached its peak, few could have predicted what was just around the corner. A storm was brewing, one that no wrench or welder could fix. The world was about to change, and with it, So would the fate of Bad Chad Customs. At first glance, everything seemed perfect. Bad Chad Customs was soaring. 2 seasons in, the brand was bigger than ever. The fans were loyal, the builds were jaw-dropping, and Chad and Jolene had become household names in the custom car scene. But behind the camera, beyond the bright lights and global attention, pressure was building. Quietly, relentlessly. When the Discovery Channel cameras first entered the garage, it was a celebration. A long overdue spotlight on a man who had built an empire from rusted parts and sheer determination. But that spotlight? It's hot, and it doesn't always reveal just the good. As production moved forward into the second season, the shop began to change. Not physically. The garage was still modest, still full of scrap parts and half-finished frames, but spiritually. What had once been a free-flowing creative space was slowly becoming a high-pressure production set. Producers began pushing for more dramatic builds, tighter timelines, and storylines that could hook viewers in the first 30 seconds. Chad, who had built his name on careful craftsmanship and creative freedom, found himself racing against invisible clocks, not the kind he respected. Every car became a race. Every project, a scripted arc. Pushpin, and if you're watching this and wondering what really happens behind the scenes of your favorite shows, make sure to subscribe to Witty Thinkers, where we uncover the untold truths behind the screen. Hit the bell so you don't miss the rest of this powerful journey. Chad had always been a hands-on builder, a man who worked with intuition, patience, and grit. But TV, with its production timelines and content needs, demanded speed, volume, and conflict. What the audience didn't always see were the sleepless nights, the reshoots, and the moments when creative inspiration was replaced with performance stress. Jolene, who had always handled logistics, now had to juggle TV, crew schedules, part orders, business finances, and fan communication, all while keeping the shop afloat. And then came creative disagreements. Producers wanted faster builds, flashier outcomes, and drama, because in the world of reality television, tension sells. But Chad wasn't interested in fake fights or rush jobs. He wanted to show the real, the grind, the sweat, the slow progress that defined his life's work. The cracks started to show. Filming days became longer. The camera crew, once welcomed like friends, now felt like an intrusion. The garage was no longer a sacred space. It was a set. And every time Chad picked up a welder, he had to wonder, am I doing this for me or for the edit room? Still, they carried on for the love of the fans. Because Bad Chad Customs wasn't just a show anymore. It was a symbol for people who believed in doing it yourself, in chasing dreams with whatever tools you had, and in building beauty out of broken things. And Chad and Jolene knew that walking away now, at the height of their success, would disappoint the very people who had lifted them to these heights. They pushed forward with Season 2, producing some of their most complex and captivating builds yet. From a custom Cadillac that looked like it had been designed in a post-apocalyptic future to a radical motorcycle inspired by 1930s Art Deco, the creativity was still there. Still burning. Still breathing. But so was the stress. Chad's hands were sore, not just from the work, but from the weight of expectation. And while he would never show it on camera, the toll was visible, in his eyes, in the silences between takes, in the moments when he would stare at a half-finished frame, wondering if the passion was being replaced by pressure. Meanwhile, fans noticed changes too. Some began commenting online about how the builds seemed more rushed, the moments more manufactured. Others expressed concern that the show might be losing its soul. But most stood by the team, offering love, encouragement, and loyalty. Yet even with fan support, Chad and Jolene knew something had shifted. Their dream was changing, being reshaped by forces beyond their control. The second season wrapped to solid ratings and strong reviews, but the weight of what they'd endured hung over them. They were tired, not just physically but emotionally. The flame that had once burned with limitless fuel was flickering. And then the world changed. In early 2020, as the team prepped for Season 3, planning new builds, scheduling shoots, and brainstorming how to take the show to the next level, whispers of a mysterious illness overseas began surfacing in the news. A virus. Something about China. Lockdowns, travel bans. No one thought much of it at first. But within weeks, the whispers became headlines. Borders began to close. Cities went silent. And industries everywhere came to a grinding halt, including the entertainment world. Bad Chad Customs, like thousands of other productions, was hit hard. Filming was postponed, then canceled, indefinitely. What began as a creative struggle behind the scenes suddenly became a full-blown crisis. Not just for the show, but for Chad and Jolene's entire life. The television spotlight was turned off. The world shut down. And in the darkness, they were left with one terrifying question. What now? As 2020 dawned, Chad and Jolene stood on the edge of what could have been their biggest season yet. The scripts were outlined. The builds were drafted. Fans were eager. But something completely out of their control was brewing. A global pandemic that would bring everything to a sudden, heartbreaking halt. COVID-19 didn't just disrupt filming. It dismantled the foundation of Bad Chad Customs. Tight safety regulations, lockdowns, and travel restrictions made filming in their small shop nearly impossible. Custom car work demands hands-on collaboration, proximity, and material sourcing, all of which became liabilities overnight. Suddenly, the set went dark. The crew went home. And for Chad and Jolene, what was supposed to be a short delay became an endless waiting game. No one could tell them when or if filming could resume. And behind the scenes, the financial strain began to build. Unlike big-budget series, Bad Chad Customs was a small operation. Without production income, the shop had to survive on its own. Part shortages, delayed shipments, canceled events, all of it chipped away at their momentum. Eventually, the word came from Discovery. Season 3 was canceled. Just like that, Bad Chad Customs, one of the most beloved grassroots automotive shows on TV, was over. Not because of ratings, not because of quality, but because of a virus that reshaped the world. For fans, it was a gut punch. For Chad and Jolene, it was devastating. Years of building, dreaming, and filming paused with no promise of return. But if there's one thing Chad Hiltz had always believed, it was this. You don't stop building just because the lights go out. With their show canceled and the world still locked down, Chad and Jolene pivoted. They turned to social media, their new platform, their new stage. Their YouTube channel became their new lifeline to fans. They started uploading behind-the-scenes videos, time-lapse of builds, updates from the shop, and raw footage of their daily grind. No producers, no deadlines, just pure, unfiltered passion. And the fans followed. Soon, their online community was thriving. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube flooded with comments, fan builds, shared memories of favorite episodes. People from all walks of life tuned in not just to see the cars, but to support two dreamers who never gave up. Even merchandise sales helped keep the brand alive. Shirts, hats, decals, all stamped with the now iconic Bad Chad logo. These weren't just items. They were symbols of loyalty, of belonging to a movement that valued heart over hype. More importantly, Chad and Jolene now had creative freedom again. They could build what they wanted, when they wanted, and how they wanted. They didn't have to chase deadlines or manufacture TV drama. They went back to doing what they loved, turning rust into gold, but now with the direct support of their fans. The shop in Nova Scotia became more than just a workplace. It became a global inspiration hub. The story of Bad Chad Customs didn't end when the camera stopped. If anything, it evolved. While the Discovery Channel chapter closed, Chad and Jolene wrote a new one. One rooted in independence, community, and pure creativity. They proved that even in the face of loss, reinvention is possible. That passion can survive anything, even a pandemic. They didn't just build cars. They built a movement. And that movement continues today. Whether it's a time-worn truck being resurrected from scrap or a modern car fused with retro soul, the work being done at Hiltz Auto Company still carries the spirit of Bad Chad Customs. And now, fans don't just watch. They interact, comment, share, and grow alongside them. That's the true legacy. So what is Bad Chad Customs today? It's a community, a brand, a movement, a reminder that you don't need money, fame, or approval to build something beautiful. You just need vision, tools, and the will to create. And to Chad and Jolene, if you're watching this, thank you. Not just for the cars, but for the story. For proving that creativity can't be canceled, and that when the world tells you to stop, you can still press the pedal and move forward. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances, creative grit, and underdog victories, subscribe to Witty Thinkers right now. This is where we celebrate real people with real stories. The kind of stories that remind us what we're capable of when we don't give up. Click that red button. Hit the bell. Share this video with someone who needs a dose of hope. Because like Chad says, it's not what you have, it's what you can make. And here at Witty Thinkers, we believe you can make anything.